Join us in this podcast episode where we delve into the world of tech startups with Dmitry Stavisky, a seasoned full-stack startup advisor. Dmitry specializes in helping tech companies flourish both in domestic and international markets, having been a key player in building two unicorn companies from the inception and holding experience in leading product development at renowned companies like Edwin, Buddy.ai, Evernote, Lingualeo, and SightPath Cisco. Dmitry brings a treasury trove of insights and strategies. His early career involved coding for several startups in Boston, constructing numerical climate models, and conducting field studies on Arctic and mountain glacial climates. With 3 successful exits, 2 CEO roles, and numerous product launches under his belt, Dmitry offers invaluable guidance to burgeoning entrepreneurs. If you are eager to learn from this extensive experience or need advice on taking your startup to the next level, don't miss this episode. Hi, Dmitry.
Hi. Well, thank you for kind intro.
I thank you, and yes, you did it all.
Not all, some.
Okay, I see that you are a very humble person. And this leads me to ask you, what is the most important lesson you've learned in life?
The question that has the most, any question that has the most in it gives me pause. One of the most important lessons in life is to position yourself to be open to opportunities. We are all given chances, and the major difference in outcomes is whether we take advantage of these opportunities or not. It doesn't mean that you have to jump on each and every opportunity. One should evaluate it, but it's helpful to be open. But also you can do things that maximize opportunities. So that's it probably sounds a bit abstract. Like to ground it a little bit.
Okay.
When let's from small things to big things. Small things. You are invited to a party or to an event, and you are tired, and you are busy. It's very easy, and you're an introvert, right? It's very easy to say no. Quite often it's useful to say yes. Just like this podcast, I said yes.
Yes, you did.
We don't know what will come out. At the very least, I think it will be an interesting conversation. But that's a small example. Career-wise, it's good to plan your career trajectory in a way that gives you optionality and exposes you to strong and interesting people and strong and interesting projects. I think again, I wouldn't call it the most important lesson in life.
This reminds me something, Dmitry, that is about lucky. I'm pretty sure that you heard before. Lucky is when opportunity means preparation. So it's in this direction that you are going to, right?
Sort of. It's not only preparation, right? People start with different life circumstances, just randomly people get different chances, and this has nothing to do with your preparation. But when you are given a chance, then being prepared matters. I think that's why you were going, right?
Yes, it is, because I heard many times in lifetime when people just say, well, I got lucky. And I met wise persons actually saying, I got lucky. And I had the opportunity to ask them, hey, man, you work so hard to do all of these things, and how can you get lucky? And then this person explained me, well, this is a very old saying, And this saying, when you say that you got lucky, for people who truly understand the meaning of it, yes, they understand that you work very hard for that, and once the opportunity comes, you get that with all of your energy, with every little single fiber of your body. The persons who
Yeah,
are
that's
not
true.
there yet and do not understand yet, they just say, oh yeah, the guy just said he got lucky, maybe I will one day, because they're not there yet.
Well, yes. Also, the opposite is true. You may work hard and you may be all prepared and just get unlucky. This is actually very applicable to the fates of startups. Self-aware founders of mega successful startups often ask like, "Hey, what was your path to success?" And they say that, "Hey, we had a great idea, we had a great team, blah blah blah," and also and we also got lucky. So self-aware founders realize that luck was on their side, and it was an important part of their success, not just talent and hard work.
Understood. So when you are actually dealing not only with the C-level but also with founders, most of the time, let's say, I don't know if you can bring a percentage like 50-50 or something like that, how you felt that they are actually prepared for what they are dealing with, because the environment of startup, the whole thing is extremely challenging. And as you mentioned, it's not only about your skills, how good you are, and how good your team is as well. In the other side, you have the competitors, and you have a huge complexity just playing around that we call the market itself, because needs, things, options change, and tomorrow your competitor can also bring up something really outstanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So here are two examples, good example and not so good example. So Evernote, external brain, not taking app. It was very important for like my career and for me as a person. It was a super talented team, great founder. We worked hard, but we also got lucky. We launched just when smartphones, iPhone happened and App Store happened. So I don't think we would be as successful without that. So here's another example. My very first startup back in Boston, it was called Continuum Software in mid-90s. It was a rocket science thing. We were developing tools to enable business people run their models on parallel computers. PhDs, super capable, like team, super challenging. We built what we said we would build. Oh, great investors too. J-Loc was an investor. So we built what we intended to build, except for one problem. 1 month before we launched into beta, Oracle came up with parallel version of their database. They didn't do everything that our system did, but it was like 80%. But these 80% were enough to just totally pull the rug from our under feet, and the market for our solution just disappeared. So that's luck.
Yes, I would say it is, and more. When we are talking about the big corporations, right, they have not only the brand, but they have a lot of market budget and all of that things that a startup may not have. Startup pretty much have the product that is solving something, and the rest is pretty much people enjoying and being delighted by this product, and of course letting other people know, right?
Yeah. So in our case, Oracle had the distribution, and they had a loyal customer base that would use whatever they offered, like closer to our times. So every announcement by OpenAI is an extinction event for hundreds of AI startups that were doing something and working hard and were talented, and their functionality just got subsumed by GPT models.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Now that's not just bad luck, right? That's also so planning, right? they picked a field frequented by elephants.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you're a little agile
Yeah.
mice,
Yeah, I
you
see the
like,
same as you. In this specific product related to AI, there's an unprecedented change. And
mhm.
it's not only about behave, it's not only about investment, it's not about branding. It's a huge change that we are having, not only in the labor market, but also in the way that companies want to go or want to do moving forward. And I think that this level of disruption is the first time we are actually presencing it. It didn't happen, that fast as now.
Uh, well, I'm a bit older than you, so I remember internet, and I was lucky to be in the middle of it. So, what is happening with new AI neural network architectures today feels pretty similar to how it felt in early 90s. Very radical and pretty rapid change in very different aspects of life. Now, some people have an opinion that this is the greatest humanity's technological transition since we invented fire. Maybe that remains to be seen. I'm not sure about that, but so far it feels more like the birth of the internet than discovery of the fire. But maybe it's just I haven't been present when the fire was discovered. Can't speak for that.
Understood. Thanks for the sharing. And who has been the most influential person in your life, and in what way?
My parents, and I think most people, if they are like aware, would answer the same question. I think we often underestimate parents' influence, both biological and cultural. So yeah, like I believe the science tells us that like 50% of trait variability is genetic. 50% is a lot. Add to that early childhood cultural differences, and I think, like, I would guess that like 90% of who we are is formed by our parents. So yeah, and yeah, my dad was an archaeologist. My mom was a medical doctor and a researcher. Um, like between the two of them, mom probably had more influence on me. She was a like totally remarkable woman, as I understand now. When you're a kid, like you take it for granted, right? So, but yeah, she was she was a medical doctor. Uh, like he was badass in her youth. He did medevac evacuation, doctor with medevac, medical evacuation at Eton as her first job after medical school. For 6 months, she was a doctor with a geological expedition in highland Pamir Plateau in Central Asia. So obviously, like I wasn't around to see that, so I reconstruct that from her and other stories. Like in her middle and old age, she was just very, very wise. And again, I didn't realize it at the time. You just take it for granted. But then at some point, you start noticing that hey, people pay a lot of respect to her, and when you get kids of your own, like that's when you realize that wow, that wasn't normal. That was exceptional. So these are my influences.
Understood. Is very nice to hear that, Dmitry, because as you said, your parents, they was kind of pioneers, right? By the time they was doing things that was not usual, and I think still, right?
I wouldn't call it pioneers. It wasn't not a mainstream career, right? Doing like science and being a doctor with medevac aviation is not a normal thing today either. They just had interesting career choices. But I was trying to explain that it's not just the unusual professional trajectory. It's like like for me as a kid, much more important was just the personalities.
What are you most afraid of, and why?
I am most afraid of the US and China getting into a hot war. It's well, it's an existential threat to civilization. At the very least, it would be a disaster for like both countries and their allies, and, like countries that have nothing to do with it. Yeah, there are all sorts of black swan risks, like a comet hitting the planet or some pandemic, a new virus emerging. But these are out of our control, and it's like I think it's easy to be optimistic and dismissive of black swan risks. Hot war between two superpowers is a very real thing, and it just feels like you know about the doomsday clock, right? So I think the Union of Concerned Scientists is running, and like they keep pushing the clock towards midnight. It feels like that. So that's my biggest worry. Now I think that if we like humanity, we avoided it through the first Cold War, but it feels like it was more controllable at the time. But maybe it's retrospective. Or somewhat optimistically, I think that if we manage not to get into trouble for the next 20 years, the risk will like substantially drop. China will have other problems on its plate. The disbalance of industrial power won't be as pronounced. Both countries will adjust to each other. Like the problem right now is that China's rise was so fast that the US hasn't adjusted to it. But that's what it is. Yeah, that's something that I worry a lot about.
I understand.
What do you think? Like you are in the neighborhood, which would be a flashpoint if something happens.
Yes.
Is it something that you think about, or is it something that is a subject of public discussion in Singapore?
Okay, so in my case, what I see, actually what I think I see, right? Because this is not even reality, it's just the interpretation of my senses of what is around. But what I see is that over the years and the decades, we have these superpowers across the world, and somehow they had adapted themselves to talk, to use diplomacy, and to do not engage into military conflicts. Instead, I saw these superpowers financing small conflicts where is actually battleground for themselves. Let's say that for some reason, US and China get into conflict. So they're not going to bring the war to US or even to China. Maybe they're going to do everything into Taiwan. The same as we have in other
potential flashpoint.
Yes. So the same we have been seeing in other countries. Right now, there are kind of conflict emerging in here that I heard. I didn't check anything. I heard that Thailand is getting conflict with Cambodia. I don't know the reason, whatever is behind that. I'm not even looking into it. But usually, when you do not have diplomacy or when the diplomacy fails, is when people get into wars or conflicts. However, today, we are so socio-economic dependent of many deals and many other nations that if you get yourself into a conflict, you are going to be expelled from that group. And once you are expelled, you may not access not only the market, but the goods from that market. I'm talking here about trade, very basic trades. We are talking things seeds, soya, and technology as well. So I don't think that today, with the all change that we have been doing the laws, will be a wise or a smart move for any nation get themselves into any war or conflict.
Yep.
So what you think about that, Dmitry? You think I'm too confident because I didn't presence myself any war, at least where I have been through my life.
Yeah.
The Cold War, but the Cold War was the ending of Cold War when there was already, let's say, we have the Soviet Union that was already falling apart.
Yeah, basically it withdrew from the fight. Well, sounds like you're saying that you're optimistic that there will be the diplomacy will.
Yes, that's something we can talk about it, right? I mean, human beings.
Hopefully, but I think we are out of our depth on this one. Not sure if it's worth digging deeper.
And that is something very interesting. We are human beings and we have very, very, very hard-coded bugs. One of those bugs is exactly as you said. We are very positive. This helps us to move forward, to keep doing, to keep trying, even when the situation is really difficult. Another thing is that our species has amnesia. We do not remember that, unfortunately, a few years back, we was having a lot of people just passing away in a global outbreak. We just don't remember that how it was. We wasn't there. We had different experience of what happened. Most of us lost someone that we care. But now, all of those years after, we doesn't seem to remind much about that trauma, that thing that happened. We just understand we don't want that back.
Yeah. Well, it's a psychological self-defense, I think. As you said, like but you said a bug. I think it's not a bug; it's a feature.
I like what you said very much. All right, so we have those features that help us to move along and to wish better days and work out on that.
Yep.
And another question that is going exactly on this direction of what we are talking here globally is how do you think we can solve global issues like poverty or climate change?
This actually rhymes nicely with the question about what I'm afraid of. We are on track solving this. So if you look at economic charts of the last 70 years, the poverty reduction was remarkable. So we are clearly on track solving the poverty. Like we are getting other problems like inequality, aging population, demographic collapse in developed world, but unless we get ourselves into some new trouble, then poverty is about to be solved. Climate change is a relatively new problem, right? But if you look at the charts, not for the 70 years, but for the 10 years, you see quite a dramatic improvement. The cost of solar energy, the fraction of energy from the renewable resources, it's being solved. And as most problems, the solution is science and technology, right? So that's like the social constructs and the politics and geopolitics are prerequisites for science and technology to develop, but at the end of the day, the trajectory is defined by what we invent and discover. So, like on this part, I'm like super optimistic. Again, unless we get into a dogfight.
Yes, I agree with you. And this reminds me something. I just don't remind who coin that. And we can improve what we measuring. So if we can measure something, as you said, we had numbers that they have been benchmarked decades ago, and now we are seeing the improvement of these numbers as well. And there are other numbers that are falling, and that's exactly the thing, right? There are things that are more emergential that we are taking care of, while others are falling, and also the population, the way that we do things and behave are changing as well. For example, right now, a big amount of the population, and when I say a big amount, I'm saying way than before, like 10 years back, they work from home, which is not an issue. The thing is, what is going to happen to this people body or even the health when they start to age? Because different than the previous generation that need to use the body to go somewhere, this generation pretty much spend too much time at home. We don't know yet what is going to happen. We don't know if it's benefic or if you come with some issues in the future. And this goes in the direction of the indicators that you mentioned before, because things are changing, right? So you mentioned as well that the population is having a decline. And the decline have many reasons. It's not only one thing, of course. We are talking here about complexity. So one fragment of that is maybe becomes very expensive to grow a child. Maybe the world is not safe as it used to be for a child just stay around, playing, stay the whole day outside, and then back indoors by the end of the day, because there are changes. So I really like what you said, and it's very sharp.
Well, it's interesting. Let's take it one by one. So you are worried about health effects of work from home. But I'm not sure why. From what I see, people who work from home, they have so instead of like spending an hour in the commute, which is not a healthy thing to do, they spend more time like exercising or walking their dogs, walking themselves. I definitely walk much more now than when I was working from the office.
Yes,
but again, maybe it's not universal, right? Maybe it depends on your.
No, let me put in a different way, okay? Let me try to be more clear on that. When I'm talking about from home, I'm talking about the side effects over your body, okay? I also work from home, and yes, I work more than ever because I am constantly focused. I'm doing what I have to do, and I'm getting that done, and I'm doing as fast and as best as I can. It's a lot of work done. And you that are listening to us maybe are exactly in the same situation. Working from home, you work way more. You have way more focus. There are a lot of benefits. I'm not taking that away. I recognize that. What I'm saying is that imagine that we are going to be working home maybe in the next 10, maybe in the 20 years. And what is exactly going to happen to our body? For example, today, one of the things that I am not doing, after I finish my shift, I am not going outside just to do a walk. I am not doing that. And I recognize
Maybe you should.
Yes, and I should. And I recognize that once I am commuting, I have to move my body. But now that I am here, working a lot more than ever, I'm just not doing that as I should.
The forcing function is gone. That's what you're saying.
Yes, now was more clear, I hope.
Right. Yeah, I guess you need like more discipline to have a healthy regimen when circumstances don't like get you out of the house, into the field or into the office.
Yes.
But, okay. I agree with that. It just looks like it's a solvable problem because you do recognize that you got back the commute time, right? So if you're investing this time in work, but like if you take some of this time and invest it into wellness, you'll be better off. But you know all of that, right? I don't need to tell you about that. About reasons why people are having fewer kids. So you mentioned, yeah, I agree that this is like super complex. You mentioned two specific reasons. One is just the cost of raising the child, which I agree is a major one. But you also said that, hey, it's less safe to grow children. So that I found surprising. Just look back, not 5 years, but 250 years, right? So I consider the risks of a village boy 250 years ago. Infectious diseases, wolves, bandits, sharp instruments in the barn, kicking horses, and compare this like to today. I think if anything, like kids, like today's kids lack like real world experience or like reasonable amount of risk. No.
Well, I would not know because I was grow pretty much outside. So what happened? I remember that during school times, I went to school early morning. Then after the school was over, I had maybe 7 years old when I was already riding my bicycle and going to the school that was, let's say, 3 kilometers away from my parents' place, was very close by. And once I back home, I already had my lunch. Then I take a rest, wake up, do my homework or anything else for 1 hour in the maximum. Then I went outside around 2 to 3 p.m. and I only back home when it was already dark, around 6 p.m. for dinner. That's it. And I was playing outside with many of my childhood friends and so on. And I do not see this happening today. I mean, I'm talking about the street back in that time. I'm not talking about you are in an apartment, in a complex, and your children is just downstairs playing. No, I'm talking about world, because in that time, of course, totally different than today in the chance that we have today, I could go and dive into some adventures with these friends of mine, and we went, like 5 kilometers away from there. We was in charge of each other's, and we take care of each other's, and we do whatever we have in there, play, have fun, and then we find our way back. Those kind of things. And it's different than, as you mentioned, when you are, for example, in a farm, and you have not only this freedom and also the childhood friend, but also you have dangerous equipments around you that can harm someone. I didn't have, by that time, anything that can harm me aside of the environment itself. Like, some branch or stones, sharp stones, things like that. And I do not see these things, and I'm not saying that is better. I'm just saying that is a different opportunity and different way that things are going on right now. Our children, including mine, she's pretty much grow indoors.
Right, but why? Is it because it's riskier, or is it because adults decided that it's risky? Like, is it objective or subjective?
I think it's objective, and I'll explain why. In case of my daughter, there are not so many children around here. The children, they are pretty much vanishing. The children that she used to play 2 years back, they are teenagers by now. They are already doing other things. They are moving away from the child mindset. That's only my child and another small child here in the whole area. And in this whole area, we have maybe 20, 30 families. That is also something you mentioned before about the decline of the population. It goes all together with the infrastructure as well. We do have infrastructure here for them, but they're just not using because they're not here.
I see. Well, okay. So first of all, my childhood experience was quite similar. Like different country, different climate, but like same idea. But the point I think the point you are making is that when there are just not enough kids in the neighborhood to give the population density of a safe playground. Yeah, this is interesting. Because otherwise, objectively, I would argue that everything is safer All right.
It's very interesting what we are talking, right? Because things are going in a very similar direction. So we are having now families with less children for many reasons, of course. We're talking about just fragments of that. We are having also a more expensive way of life, even that we are working more, even that we are more specialized and things like that. We have a better education than we had a decade or 2 decades ago. It does not mean we are making more. And we have also the aging population, right? Because we are moving away from 20s, getting to 30s, and so on. And who is left behind is actually a small number of people than before. For example, let's say that who is moving now for the 30s? 100 persons are moving to the 30s. Who is left behind in the 20s? Maybe 6, 7, or even 4 persons.
Right.
The shrinking is happening.
Right. Yeah, inverse pyramid. Well, especially in places like Singapore or San Francisco, the city of San Francisco, for that matter. Yep.
Have you seen that?
Just as a side note, so I'm in Europe right now, and one thing that came up when we read about the European city histories is that cities were always population sinks. That because of the unhealthy environment and lifestyle and all of that, they were also always growing historically at the expense of the countryside. What you're describing is the same mechanics, but taken to the extreme.
Yes. And when I have been in Europe, I have been there, if I'm not mistaken, around 2011, I could notice it something similar to the population. However, again, it's a different universe, right? So in Europe, I could not see many families. I could not see many children. I saw pretty much people in their 30s and 40s, just, having their life, doing their things like everyone else, but not actually having a next generation. It doesn't seem to be the priority. And I don't know, you think that it has changed? You see more children there or not anymore?
Oh, then you mean today rather than 2011? I don't think it got better. The numbers that I see indicate that it's actually getting lower. I don't want to say worse, but like it's lower.
Yes, let's just say it's not improving, right? It's not getting there.
Well, there is a value judgment when we say improving or getting better. Because we postulate that it's bad that the population is shrinking. I think so, but there are people who don't.
Understood. Very good. And this leads us to something we discussed a little bit as well. And this is actually a very important lesson to help out the persons that are listening to us right now. And as we was talking about, population shrinking, all of these things happening around, and there is a big amount of complexity. We bring clarity for very few topics in here. So for the persons that are listening to us, what event in your career has most shaped your professional identity today?
There were actually two, and both were events that made me take pretty sharp turns. So I was trained as a geophysicist. I studied climate first as a field research and then as a modeler. I was developing climate models. And in 1990, and I grew up in Moscow. I went to college in Moscow, and I started my professional work in Moscow. So in 1990, I got a chance to join to work for a joint project with the Research Institute in Boston. It was also an academic research, pretty close to what I was doing before, but it was in a different setting. It was in Boston, not in Moscow. This turned out to be a big deal. Geography matters. In a sense, it was a very comfortable and mild form of emigration. It wasn't designed, it wasn't intended to be an immigration, right? I was a research scientist, a visiting scientist, and the assumption was that in 3 years I'll come back. The problem was that I left Soviet Union and in the spring of 1991, and when I came back for a vacation a year later, Soviet Union was no more. The Academy of Sciences where I worked was like pretty much no more. So there wasn't much to come back to in the early 90s. So we built a life in the US. And among other things, it turned out that in normal countries, there are career paths like that are rewarding and are not in science. Because in Soviet Union, if you are like reasonably ambitious, your career choices are pretty limited. You could work for the military, you could work for KGB, you could work for economic mafia, or you can do science. Maybe I forget some other like more exotic choices, but these were my choices. For a number of reasons, I chose a science. I didn't work to be a mafiosi or a KGB or a military man. That left science, right? So you come to the US and you realize that, hey, there is a software industry, and there is that, and there is that, and there is entrepreneurship. Many more options. So 3 years after we moved to the US, I left academia and went to software industry. And like speaking of chances and luck, it so happened that it was the very beginning of the internet wave. So I got like really lucky, but again, I got this opportunity because I was offered this to take part in this joint project. So anyway, that was the first pivotal event, if you will. The second one was in 2008 at Evernote. So Evernote was one of the early unicorns in Silicon Valley. We built what we called it external brain. We started with a note-taking service. They were like pretty successful at the time. I joined as a VP of product, which was a logical continuation of the previous trajectory. Software developers, software architects, team leads. Okay, not a big leap to a technical role of a VP of product. What happened is in 2008, Phil Libin, our CEO, asked me to change the role and to be responsible for Evernote expansion outside of the US. Well, there were two reasons for that. One was that we found a VP of product who was much more capable as a VP of product than I was. And another one is that out of other people on the team, like I was a better fit for the role of international growth, which is not to say that I knew anything about it. Like it was my first business role. I had no idea what marketing is about or what PR is about, but I had like because of being an immigrant and growing up in another country and being trained as a geophysicist, I knew more about the world outside of the US than most other people on the team. So these were my only classifications, but like that was a pretty sharp career turn from a technical role to a business role. And it was also like great fun. At the time, there were no playbooks. it was very unconventional for a scrappy startup to start a massive international expansion. So we had to invent our own playbooks, and it was fun.
I can imagine that. I have been working in startups since the year 2011. I mean, the most relevant part of it. And I'm still doing that, even now. However, now is a very cold winter out there for startups, and a big shift in the market, as we talked earlier. And this is the most interesting thing, and what I like more about startups is in there you have the space, you have the know-how, and you have a very positive environment in order to not only create things, but also challenge yourself. And if it didn't work, try something else. That's just fine. Which we cannot find that in more traditional companies, and you get severely punished by that. So I can imagine that you had a lot of fun in Evernote into the expansion outside the US, and you had brought a lot of things into the table along with your teams.
They probably did.
Moving forward in these scenarios and the startup environment, can you tell us a bit more about the challenge that you had overcome, and how did you overcome them? Because as I see, not only you, but I believe that most of the persons that are listening to us, maybe they have an international experience as well. Maybe they was able to work in a different country, as you mentioned. You are there as an immigrant, and you are already proving yourself in many ways, because you also don't feel that safe or even secure, which is just about human psychology. It's not about what is exactly happening. And in there, you are doing a really good job, and you are dealing and interact with many other people that think in a different way, or that do things in a different way, which is also very good and rich. And we are talking here about the startup environment where all of those things are very welcome. The question is, what has been your biggest professional challenge?
Okay,
and
this one.
How did you overcome it?
It's actually related to this second turn in my career. I was well. First of all, I am an introvert, and my background was technical, and I was asked to play a business role. Basically, it was a general manager style role when you are responsible for business outside of North America and Japan. Had no idea how to do that. There wasn't much to learn from others, so it was a lot of improvisations. I think the most important part that we did was to hire capable people, both in the headquarters and in the countries, and give them a lot of autonomy. The way we structured the team, we had, well, first of all, international leveraged, not just the product that had universal value, but the heavy lift that headquarters marketing was doing in the US. We were using their marketing materials, repurposing those for other markets. So we had regions, and regions had GMs, and we had people in major markets or in major countries on the ground. We called them market development people. These were basically universal soldiers. They were technical enough to understand the product and be able to communicate it to the press, to partners, to the user community, and importantly, to structure the feedback they were getting from local users and feed it back to the product team. They weren't PR people, but were capable of working with local PR agencies, and PR was a big part of Evernote growth strategy. And this market our market development people, they knew how to do partnerships, which was another track for growth. It wasn't easy to find those, but we were intentional about that, and we got a bit lucky. So we hired some extraordinary people. It turned out that the user community was the best source of hires in general, and of hires for the market development role in particular. They were passionate about the product, they knew it, and we knew them. So that was a good source of talent. And we gave those people a lot of autonomy. We tried to give them as much like product and marketing support, but it was necessarily just because we were still a small company with multiple priorities. They had to be pretty scrappy. But at the end, it worked. Basically, when I was asked to take on this role in 2008, the chapter was to turn Evernote into an international company. By the summer of 2013, when I left the company, we had more than half of the user base, about half of the revenue, and the majority of the growth outside of the US. So that was a pretty good run overall.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
It was also like pretty stressful when you are doing something like totally new and you have no education or experience. I had a lot of support from colleagues, from fields, even from investors. Like in China, we got a lot of help from Sequoia. They helped us find the general manager. They helped us with GR. But anyway, it was super stressful, super intense, and super interesting.
Yes, I can imagine that, and it was something that the overall is really good. Evernote is absolutely a global product. It's one of the products that I heard a lot of compliments. I'm not sure about the last 5 years. I'm not following, and I remember that that was something really remarkable. And I can imagine the kind of stress that you dealt with, and you are here today to tell the story, which is even more important because you're talking about global expansion here. You have very high expectations. You have a lot of numbers that need to come up from somewhere, and you need to figure out how to do that. And it's the point that you mentioned before, that you need to educate yourself. You need absolutely good people around you as well. You don't need to be the smarter person in the room. Someone needs to know something, and that person will be able to guide and to help and to move along, as you mentioned as well, giving a lot of autonomy to people. And by the end, we see that, yes, you really do need guts and also attitude to get into it. Because as you said in the beginning in our talk, it's easy to say no. And you said yes, and you take this challenge, and today you are here to tell the story, and I'm very thankful to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly. It was very easy to say that, like, hey, like, what do I know about international development or international growth? Yep, exactly.
So, Dmitry, in what ways you are contributing to your professional community today?
In part, you answered it in your intro. I work as an advisor, helping startups get off the ground. I'm also trying to be active in Y Combinator alum community. I was lucky to go through Y Combinator with my last startup, and it was super interesting. And one of the long-lasting benefits of Y Combinator is the community. So I am a moderator in a group with 20,000 people who are interested in applying to YC, and this is not business. This is a community work. With as an advisor, I play two roles. I help early stage companies with pretty much general advice. At this stage, they're not very specialized. Founders run into all sorts of questions, and sometimes I can help them. Hey, help me brainstorm about the product roadmap. What do you think about this go-to-market strategy? Please take a look at our pitch deck. Help us interview this person. Can you introduce us to such and such? Let's brainstorm about our fundraising approach. Like very different issues, generalist advice. My other vertical practice, if you will, is with much more mature companies. It's usually like post-Series C. And this is actually my core competency, international growth. So that's companies who establish themselves in the domestic market. They proved the product, they proved themselves, and they have the resources to go outside. This is a more hands-on role. I help them set up international function within the organization, become global ready, make plans for international expansion, and then sometimes execute it as well. But even with early stage startups, sometimes I have to roll up my sleeves. That's why my LinkedIn says that I'm full stack advisor. I had a pretty intense involvement with one of the companies, helping them set up analytics within the company. These days, I'm helping Buddy.ai. That's the company that we merged with back in 2020. Explore a new product direction. That's also a pretty hands-on role, but more so. I would like to think that this is my contribution to startup community, but it's also my business. Yeah. It's more about seeing around the corner, helping avoid avoidable mistakes, and recover from unavoidable mistakes.
I understand what you said about the avoidable mistakes. I have been seeing, in many different opportunities, very old mistakes taking place into startups. And it's not only about the culture, but it's also about the way that people behave or even allow the direction of the teams. It's more about people. I'm pretty sure that there are so many things happening that not only the founders, but also the C-level, they are taking good care of that things. They are really important. And sometimes those things slip away. And it's not nice to see, right? A very young company performing very old mistakes that are, as you said, avoidable.
That's right.
All right.
That's the role.